We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
Disseminate propaganda to influence people's minds, and this is a major function of the CIA.
Hussein and his regime are concealing their efforts to produce more weapons of mass destruction.
Welcome back to Notify America. We have multiple pressing stories to get to, stories that include a major policy shift in the Ukraine-Russia war, something that the media is trying to keep quiet. Also, President Biden takes to the microphone yesterday and begins mumbling, then screaming about Donald Trump, a very concerning scene. You'll see what I mean. We have the clip. Also, RFK Jr. to join the Libertarian Party. He says he's considering it. And a recently disclosed report by active duty FBI agents claims that recruitment standards at the Bureau have plummeted due to DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how it's now posing a potential threat to national security. We'll look at it. Also, the 24-hour deadline that Joe Biden gave Texas to stand down, it's lapsed. The president gave the state of Texas 1 day to allow his Border Patrol back into Shelby Park, saying you have 1 day to comply or face the consequences. Well, it's been 72 hours now and nothing's happened. We have the details. Apparently, a deal's in the works and it's not a good one. But before we get started, thank you for liking and sharing these videos. It really helps me out. Also, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss these daily updates. A new border deal is being finalized in the Senate that has the White House's backing, senators' backings from both parties. The deal includes that 5,000 daily threshold that we've been talking about, mandatory detention of all single adults, and a new authority codified into law that requires Border Patrol to immediately remove illegal immigrants that they catch without processing them. They wouldn't get to request asylum like they do now. Instead, they'd be immediately removed back to Mexico or deported to their home countries. This would be a massive change from current policy, massive change, which says any illegal migrant who reaches U.S. soil right now must be processed via Title VIII. That's what it says right now. And they're allowed to claim asylum given a court date in 6 years from today, or however long it takes, sometimes 8 years, who knows, which means we've been right about the 5,000 person threshold. People have been talking about that for weeks, about this deal being in the works, and the media came out and fact-checked it, saying that there is no deal being considered with a daily threshold. So once again, any official fact check that you read, just know it's state propaganda. They ask the government a question, they get back a response. Whatever the response is, they take it as the gospel truth. This comes after Joe Biden gave the state of Texas 24 hours, by the way, to reopen Shelby Park, saying you have 24 hours to reopen the park to federal Border Patrol, 24 hours to let the federal government back in, or you're going to face the consequences, he said. Well, 72 hours later, and nothing's happened. Now, in response to this, Texas Governor Greg Abbott wrote on X 3 words, "Hold the line," which brings us to this deal. As Biden backed himself into a corner, he only has 2 options, really. Either back down and look weak, or the second option is to federalize the Texas National Guard, an extreme action, something that's only been done a handful of times in history, the history of this country. Hence why the White House is trying to cut a deal now. They're trying to save face. But the good news is that this deal's not happening. The Speaker of the House already came out and said it's dead on arrival. And think about it. What they're talking about is letting 5,000 people a day break the law before they decide to actually enforce the law. Take out the threshold and we can talk, because immediate deportation is exactly what's needed to solve the problem. In another story, the U.S. announces a major shift in policy toward its support of Ukraine. The Biden administration says it's shifting its focus on helping Ukraine fight off new Russian advances and will help with economic support rather than any more counteroffensives. The Washington Post spoke to a senior official who's quoted saying it's pretty clear that it will be difficult for them to try to mount the same kind of major push on all fronts that they tried to do last year, unquote. This is after $100 billion, by the way, of U.S. tax money that Biden sent to Ukraine, which means the lines are now drawn. They've been drawn, folks. The Ukrainian territory currently controlled by Russia will likely stay Russian moving forward. So 500,000 lives, hundreds of billions of dollars later, and this is what we have to show for it. Realize President Biden turned this into a proxy war, used Ukraine as a pawn in a proxy war between the United States and Russia. And when he was asked why we're over there at all, he said for regime change. He said that. All while his administration was saying this was a humanitarian mission. One hell of a humanitarian mission. 500,000 people gone. An entire generation of Ukrainians gone. Not to mention all the Russian casualties as well. The entire policy was shameful, considering that all Putin wanted originally before he ever invaded, even after he initially invaded, was assurances that Ukraine would not enter NATO. Something that was originally agreed to, by the way, years earlier. In another story, RFK Jr. says he's considering running as a libertarian in order to get onto the ballot in all 50 states, telling CNN's Michael Smerconish Saturday morning, saying his team and himself are looking into this, how he has a good relationship with the Libertarian Party. Watch this.
Is it possible that you will seek, as you are running as an independent, you will seek still to be the Libertarian candidate, which would assure you getting on all 50 state ballots?
That's something that we're looking at. We have a really good relationship with the Libertarian Party. I'm going to be speaking at the California Libertarian Party convention. I think it's next week or maybe a couple of weeks. And then we're talking about me speaking in New York. But, so that is, and then we have our own political party now in 6 states, which have rules that make that give us an advantage to have our own political party. We're not going to have a problem
I ask you the question because Angela McArdle, the head of the Libertarian Party. Catherine, do we have the sound of this, by the way? Tell me quickly. Okay, I want to play something for the audience. This is the head of the Libertarian Party on my radio show in the fall. Roll it.
We've had a lot of good conversations and we're on good terms. And I respect his decision to want to go independent. The Libertarians really admire the strong position he took against mandates and lockdowns. And so we're going to stay on friendly terms and see what happens.
Bobby, make some news. I mean, it sounded to me like she's welcoming you to come in and ask for their ballot position.
Yeah, well, we are talking to the Libertarian Party, and I feel very comfortable with most of the values of the Libertarian Party.
But here's the thing. RFK supports the Israel-Hamas war. And look, I like RFK. I think he's done a hell of a good job on exposing a lot of issues that a lot of people weren't aware of. But you can't support war. Can't support a proxy war and be the libertarian candidate. If Hamas was bombing U.S. shores, it'd be a different story. But they're not. And Israel is plenty capable of fighting its own war without the backing of the United States. New York City capitulates and removes a Thomas Jefferson statue from City Hall. The 1833 bronze statue, which resided in the city council chambers for over a century, was removed this week after a vote, saying they decided to remove the former president's presence from the city council because of the feelings it invokes due to his links to the slave trade. You can't make this stuff up, folks. In another story, Joe Biden continues to mentally struggle, and he appears to be getting worse. In the last few months, we've seen him get worse and worse. We saw him get lost coming off his helicopter 2 weeks ago. His aides and Secret Service have to guide him where to walk, where to go next. It's why, he has so few public events. Whenever he speaks in public, the clip goes viral, showing him having trouble walking and talking or dozing off. Well, this week, that's exactly what happened. Watch this clip. As he gets asked about the primary election, he gets very worked up and angry, starts yelling at the cameras. And look, I had a grandmother with dementia, which turned into Alzheimer's disease, and it was awful. She would get worked up, start yelling over a simple question, because people with dementia become frustrated easily. They stop caring about things. I don't know, Joe just reminds me of the situation that I personally saw with my grandmother. Only my opinion. Watch this.
Donald Trump, when he was commander-in-chief, refused to visit a cemetery, U.S. cemetery outside of Paris for fallen American soldiers. And he referred to those heroes, and I quote, as suckers and losers. He actually said that. He said that. How dare he say that? How dare he talk about my son and all of us just like that?
And look, this is becoming a real issue for Democrats. They don't know how to handle this, how to spin it. So they ignore it completely, but that's tough to do during an election season, as you need to point to your presidential candidate and say, this is what you should vote for. Listen to what our agenda is. Look at the leader of our party. Listen to him. But again, they can't do that with Joe. So they make the entire strategy about Orange Man bad, Donald Trump bad. It's going to cost them. And it's why there's rumors and rumblings that Joe will not be the nominee come November. Apparently, Barack Obama is now lining up donors for Michelle to take over after Super Tuesday, something that sounds crazy. How do you replace the President of the United States as the nominee? Well, they don't really have a choice. All right, that wraps up this episode. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.